Hey now, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cinemacast right here on our YouTube channel. Before I get into today's topic, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below if you enjoy our content on this channel. This video, along with many others, also gets uploaded to our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ArrowENT. We don't just stream over there, we also upload as well. And if you want to keep up to date with us on updates on any of our streams or anything at all, be sure to follow us on Twitter and on Discord. Links are down below in the description section. So, let's get into what everybody has been shitting on for the past week or so, depending on when you're watching this review. So, if you're not familiar with Borderlands is a video game that was developed by 2K Games and Gearbox. Borderlands goes back, I want to say 10, close to 15 years. First came out back on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, and I think it was also on PC as well. It's a first-person shooter RPG game, and it's pretty graphic. It's a graphic game. It's an M-rated game, and they can be pretty lengthy. I've played pretty much all of them. I may have beaten only one of them so far, and they are pretty comical. Yes, there is a balls to the wall comedy, comedy style within the game. Sometimes it's known to break the fourth wall in a sense, but the game's basically, you go through, you visit worlds, you meet new people, you create a character based off of whichever character they have available, and you meet some of the characters throughout the world. You got a lot of quest lines, you got main quest lines, side quest lines, stuff like that. And the premise is simple. You fight a lot of bosses, you meet a lot of people, and when you get to the end game, you're able to access what's considered the vault. And the vault is supposed to be something very special that you access. I forgot pretty much what was in the vault. It's been a long time since I beat the game. But I will say that the game has a particular charm on a lot of gamers, a lot of hardcore gamers, and even casual gamers as well, who do enjoy video games like this. Now, when it comes to video games and when it comes to movie adaptations, we've had movie adaptations for over 30 years. Mind you, the very first one was Super Mario Brothers, the movie. And I'm not talking about that animated, what I call a shit show. I mean, it was all right, which came out the last couple of years, but I'm talking about the 1993 Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, Dennis Hopper movie, which it was live action. And at the time, you couldn't think, how could they make a live-action movie out of an 8-bit game where a little character goes on a screen from left to right? How can you make a story out of that? Well, they did. Even though there was a lot of production hell behind that movie, and it was directed by a wife and husband duo, and it was just a movie that fell apart in the end. The cast did not have much fun making it. Some of the cast got drunk on the set. At times you can actually see it in the final stage of the final production of the movie. You can actually see, hey, they are drunk when they're fucking driving this truck, or they're drunk when they're doing this, So it was hell for them. Now, for me, that movie, as bad as it was, it's nostalgic for me, so I will still watch it to this day. I still enjoy watching it, even though I know it's bad. I know it's horrible. But it's just something that I have a guilty pleasure for. There's a lot of bad movies out there that people have guilty pleasures for. And maybe this movie here will be one of those, like how many movies, I can't even count how many movies came out in the last 30 years that have been up and down with the ratings when it comes to video game adaptations. Like some of the best ones like Mortal Kombat and Tomb Raider were some of the best examples out there, even within recent years as well. And then you had terrible adaptations, like Super Mario Brothers or House of the Dead and such. But I don't think anything can quite compare to, in a sense, of this movie right here. Now, like I said with like Super Mario Brothers, it's almost like how can you make a movie out of the game like that? Then when you get to the early 2000s and you had House of the Dead. House of the Dead was a zombie horror game which was a light gun game for the Dreamcast. You didn't move around or anything. It was a rail shooter, basically. It's like one of those games you play at a fucking Chuck E. Cheese, basically. You aim at the screen, shoot the zombies, and you move on to the next part. That kind of thing. I was like, how do you turn a game like that into a movie like that? Well, they did. you know? And I've seen it, and I gotta say, yes, I could tell it was absolutely horrible. Would I watch it again? I probably would, because there is some entertainment value to movies like that. Just like with Borderlands, I will say there is some entertainment value to this movie, which would draw in probably some fans of the game, I will say. Now, before I go into it, and this is going to be kind of biased of me to say, now, if you watch my other podcast, Tune In Live, you know I can get pretty political about a lot of things and how I feel about particular groups. I will say this movie is very woke, and it is pretty woke in a sense. I mean, you have an ensemble cast of people that are on the liberal side, liberal Hollywood and such, including Jack Black, unfortunately. Now, I am not a fan of Jack Black. I never really have. I've seen a handful of movies with him in it that I could tolerate him in, but then when it came to recent events, which occurred around the almost attempted assassination of President Donald Trump, and the remarks that were made by him and his touring buddy Kyle Gass and their shit band Tenacious D, to where I'm like, okay, not only because of that, but then you endorse a lot of money into a presidential candidate that is dumber than dog shit, then I'm like, yeah, I've lost all respect for you at that point with those two things. So, sadly, the only downfall about this movie to me is Jack Black has a part in it, but he voices Claptrap, the miniature robot on one wheel that follows one of the characters around in the movie. Now, granted, I will say, director Eli Roth, I would say that they did get that part right. Clapchat, the little robot, like they got him down to the T, especially with his characterization, with how his role is in the game. They got it marked down. And I will say Jack Black almost got the voice perfect for the character, for the robot. And it's almost like he had so much fun with it. Now, if I was a diehard Jack Black fan, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there who are. You will definitely probably love him in that role of that little robot. Especially if you've played the games, because he does it very well. It almost hurts me to say he does it very well for Claptrap. And I will say that's probably the one thing that does steal the show in this movie. Now, what has this movie got for fans of the video game series? Well, it definitely sort of feels like a Borderlands game in a sense. You have the setting, Pandora, you have the planet, you have some of the characters, Roland, you got Tiny Tina, you got Lilith. I can't remember if Jamie Lee Curtis's character was in one of the games. Her character is Tannis. I think I did see that name Tannis before. And of course, you got who is this? Krieg. I guess that is okay. I can't. I forgot. I think Krieg was the would you call it? The hologram, the guy that runs the hologram. You got Mad Moxie. You got all sorts of characters in this game. Even Marcus, the bus driver, almost down to the T. So it's almost like they have just the basis of the game, the setting, the characters, everything pretty much down to the T as they are within the game itself. So you'll definitely kind of feel right at home with the characters, with the way the characters are dressed and set up, with just everything in basis. Um, it even says on their Wikipedia, Penn Jillette was going to have a cameo in the film as a preacher overseeing a wedding after voicing Pain, the duo Pain and Terror, which is in the game from Borderlands 3. However, the scene was not included in the final version of the film. Okay. So I will say, you got an ensemble cast of Jack Black, Kate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, Jamie Lee Curtis, and such. And the movie basically revolves around this character, Tiny Tina, who seems to be an important piece that you later find out as to what her special gift is in the game. If you're familiar with the games, yes, characters do have special abilities within the games. Only a couple of them do. And they do, they wield a lot of guns. And some of the guns you do see from the video games themselves. Like the whole Borderlands game series has dozens upon dozens of weird weapons and such. But yeah, I will say like the weapons in the game, they do tend to make it into the movie. Some of the weapon designs in the game, so there is a little touch of that within there if that makes you feel kind of homely with that. But yeah, everything revolves around this character, Tiny Tina, and there's so many people that are out to get her or after her for a particular reason. And one of the characters which the movie mainly focuses on is the redheaded Lilith, who is looking to bring her home to her father, or in a sense protect her. But then the secret cuts out as to why she is needed or wanted so very badly. And everything revolves around this place called the Vault, which is supposed to be a magical place that holds wonders in it. And you got several people that are trying to activate it at once. Even though Lil's character is said to be a vault hunter, she proclaims in the movie that she is not. She's just a bounty hunter. She's there to do a job, grab the girl, bring her home. Meanwhile, you have this guy played by Kevin Hart, who plays the character Roland, and he's followed around by this big bodyguard. I forgot what the guy's name is. He wears the mask. That's one of the villains in the game itself. You guys will identify it as, but I forgot what his name was. So they're protecting the girl. They're transporting her around, keeping her away from people. They come across Lilith, who then acquires Claptrap, or comes across Claptrap almost fairly early in the movie. And Jamie Lee Curtis's character Tannis doesn't really come into play until like halfway through the movie, but I'm not going to spoil that for you guys because there's quite a bit going on with this movie. I will say, if you go into watching this, if you're interested in watching this, but you've never played the video game, you're going to be left very confused with the plot, with the setup of the movie, everything. And there are so many people out there who have seen this movie and are saying these people who made this movie did not play the games at all. They know nothing about the video game series. And I think that's what pretty much hurts this movie right now, is the fact that you do have a lot of people who either played the game or know the game and just never played it. And they feel like, okay, these people here, they know nothing about the game itself. They don't know what they're doing. So in a way, I will say I can agree with them, but then it's like, come on now. Like, how many movies have come out where people have never played it? Look at Super Mario Brothers. It was said that the director duo has never played the game or really heard much about the game, and they were just set to make out this movie. And look how bad that turned out, you know? At least with this, you know, Eli Roth, I want to say he's directed a couple other video game movies and such. If I go through his no, he hasn't. Okay, so he has not produced or directed any video game based movie. He's done a lot of horror based movies within the last 22 years in his lifetime. So, yeah, this is probably his first go at a video game adaptation. And the direction or the production of the style of the movie, it tries to follow the way the game is in a sense, but not too closely. There is a lot of throwables in there from the game. Like I said, the characters, to the setting, to the weapons, to the costumes and everything, the names of the characters and such. It's almost like with Resident Evil. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Resident Evil. I love the franchise. I love the video games, and I do have a guilty pleasure for the movies, even though there are a couple of the entries, the live action horror, Resident Evil movies that are pretty lackluster or just pretty downright what the fuck, you know, in a sense. But I think that's where Borderlands kind of takes place. I think it gets the same production value in a sense as like a Resident Evil movie does, where you put whatever you feel is inside the game, which is integrated in the game, and you integrate it into the movie, and boom, you got a video game adaptation in a live action movie. Now, this movie, I don't want to say it has a potential for a sequel. I don't see it having a sequel in the future. But I will say, when watching this movie, I went into it with very low expectations because it was something that I expected. For one, you got a cast of actors and actresses who are basically part of the liberal woke mob of Hollywood, you know? That is where I wasn't even really going to watch the movie to begin with. Not just because of that, because you know you got Jack Black who's in the limelight right now for a lot of controversy. You know when it comes to the liberal left. You know, and plus I really don't care for him. You know, but I pushed myself into watching this movie, and plus being somebody who has played the games, I know what to expect from the games. I know where to go from with this. And I do got to say, like, sadly, I do got to admit, Jack Black did do a good job with the voiceover with Claptrap Robot. I do got to say, like, you know, for the characters themselves, they pretty much mimic how they are in the game, which is cool. You even got the bus that drops Lilith off at the beginning, you know, of the movie. So they add pretty much a little bit of detail from this and that from within the games. You know, you got Maxie's bar, you got the way the town's set up. It's set up the same way in the game. The enemy style, everything is set up pretty much how it is in the game. So when I hear or read that people talk about they didn't play this game, they probably just only mildly researched into what goes into the game or what the game's about. It's like, no, they did put a good amount of detail into it. So they actually did their homework. When you go into something like this and you want to turn a video game into a movie, you got to know the original source. You have to know what you're looking for when you're putting a movie like this together. And I think they did it seldomly well. I really do. But I feel like where this movie falls apart at is it's got a PG-13 rating, which I understand they try to make it for all audiences, including children. But the game is rated M for mature. It's a very mature, violent game with profanity, blood, violence, and gore. So they toned down what made the game. They toned it down in the movie to make it more family appealing in a sense. You know, they want kids to go see it. They want adults to be able to enjoy it. So I think that's one right there. For two, the movie is only an hour and a half long, really. To have everything situated within that movie. You got so much that does happen within the games, but they can only squish it within an hour and a half period. Which is fine, which is a typical standard for video game adaptation movies nowadays, or even growing up. You know, a lot of those movies were only 80 minutes, 90 minutes, maybe 100 minutes long. Nowhere near 2 hours. Now, if you get a 2 hour or 2.5 hour long video game adaptation, they probably did something right with it. They probably had a lot of production go into it. You know, they had a lot of good script going into it to give it that feel, you know? But there's just a few things that keep this movie from being one of this summer's blockbusters, basically. And there's a lot that definitely went into it. Now, for me, I feel it was the story. Now, I understood how the story went, and being I did play the games, and I know how the games are, to me, the story feels very much lackluster. I will say that. Like, the final act of the movie, I'm not going to give it away, but there should have been one big, massive blowout with the movie, the way it is in the games. You know, you expect, like, okay, when you play the games and you get to the end of the story and there's this big thing that happens in the end, you know, and it's massive or whatever. But I feel like with what they tried with the end of this movie, they tried it, but it was very lacking in sense. It was lacking, not really with detail, but the story was kind of lacking a little bit. It's almost like they tried to bum rush it in a sense, and they just pushed too much into it to make it just basically short-lived ending. So even though, you know, this movie did have a lot of potential for it, but it just fell short in the end. It was very lacking. I feel like the characters, they had so much potential, you know, because in the games, you know, you do explore the characters a little bit depending on your gameplay. So you didn't have too much of a background with these characters, and maybe with a couple of them halfway through, okay, you learn that this character has this ability or this character has a purpose being here, even though the main focus is on the character Lilith, and the entire time the movie makes you think, okay, this character Tiny Tina has a special potential with her, which makes her important, but it ends up with a slight twist in the end. And even though with that slight twist, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But it still falls pretty short. And I will say this movie, as much as the critics, as much as the fans try to bash it too, I went into it with low expectations because of how I feel about everything all around, you know. Like I said, there's a liberal woke crowd in this movie. I feel this movie is one of those woke movies, basically. But going into it, I will say, if you push all that aside politically, this can be a pretty entertaining movie, especially if you're a fan of the game series. Like I said, they got a lot of things right in this movie to try to make it feel as close to the game as humanly possible. And they did that. They actually did a good job with it. Is this movie for everybody? No, it is not. I feel this is one of those movies in a rare occasion where it's more for the fans than it is for anybody else. So if you are unfamiliar with the Borderlands video game franchise, you are not going to like this movie. You're not going to go into it very well. It's not going to suit you very well. You're not going to understand who these characters are, where they come from. You're not going to understand what is going on with this whole movie, you know? And I know there's some people who have seen it and they're like, oh, if you never played the video game, you'll probably enjoy it. No, it's the other way around, actually. It's the other way around. because it would be a very confusing mess for somebody who's like, oh, this is very bright and colorful and all. What's this character doing? What's that character doing? You know, so this is one of those do you want to chance it or not movies. You know, I chanced it with my time. Luckily, I didn't have to spend any money to see it, so that's a plus right there. But I chanced whatever time I had open. It was an hour and a half. And I will say, I wasn't left tongue in cheek with it, but I will say I was left like, yeah, it was a lackluster in a sense. But it did have some entertainment value to it for the most part, and I will say I did kind of enjoy it. I really did. I did kind of enjoy it. So what rating do I give Borderlands? I'm not going to go real low. I will say I could probably give Borderlands at least a 4 or 5 out of 10. It's not above a 5 at least. But I will give it like a 4 or a 5. I'm kind of teetering on it right now. But I will say if you listen to all these other reviewers out there, if you read a lot of these articles on it, don't listen to a lot of what they say. Like today's review is my opinion on it. Whether you go off of it or not, I will say make your own opinion on this movie. If you really want to go see this movie, if you're interested, I would say go check it out. You know, maybe you won't waste your money after all. You know, maybe it'll be a hell of an experience. There are some people who are like, hell yeah, this was a fire movie. You know, this movie was lit as hell, you know? But make your own opinion about something like this. Because, like I said, I went into this with low expectations, and I came out of it where I was like, okay, they actually did something good with this movie, minus a couple setbacks. So that ends it for today's review of Cinemacast, guys. Thank you for watching today with today's feature of Borderlands. Have you seen this movie yet? What did you think about it? Let us know down in the comment section what your feelings and thoughts are. And guys, once again, thank you for joining me today. Be sure to hit that like, subscribe button down below if you have yet to do so. If you guys want to check out our live streams when we go live and such, you can follow us on here, or you can follow us on our Twitch or our Kick channels. Links are down below in the description section, as well as links to our social media Twitch, our social media Twitter, and on Discord. If you guys are on Discord, you can follow our server over there. Links for all that is right down below. Anyway, guys, thank you once again for joining me today. Hope you guys enjoyed today's review. Hope you guys enjoy our podcasts and such. And until next time, we will catch you right back here at the cinema.